In the know, non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And it's Purple Access right now. Judd, Declan, and Chip Scoggins. Training camp is over. The official end came with day 2 of the joint practices against the Arizona Cardinals at TCO Performance Center. On Thursday, Vikings will play one more preseason game on Saturday, and then cuts will be made from 90 to 53 on Tuesday. Chip Scoggins, along with yours truly, spent the past 2 days out at TCO watching the Vikings. So as we get set for cuts, Chip, what is your feeling now? I know that you saw at least a handful, if not more, of training camp practices. What is your feeling about what you've seen, especially in those joint practices from the 2023 Vikings?
Yeah, I would say the offense was sporadic, I think, which we were joking. That's what training camps are. Some good, some bad, as Seifert says. Don't read anything into it.
Yep.
But it was. There are times we saw Cousins get frustrated with something. He let out his one curse word, right? Was it yesterday or
Wednesday?
When was that? Tuesday, Wednesday? Yeah,
Wednesday.
But also a lot of good moments for them too. So defensively, I think we're seeing the Flores. Is chaos the right word for that? It's
controlled chaos.
Yeah. I asked Davenport that. He's like, chaos sounds like it's too uncontrolled. He took it as a rip more than a compliment.
It looks like chaos to us and opponents, and that's all he cares about.
Yeah, it's funny.
Not chaos internally.
Exactly, like they don't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
When Tennessee was here, I asked Ryan Tannehill, their quarterback. I said, "Would you call that defense unique?" And he said, "I wouldn't call it unique, but it's something you don't see too often, which sounds like unique to me." But
yeah.
So clearly it's and I think it's frustrated Cousins throughout camp here too. So, but I'm curious, as cuts come Tuesday, what do they do at wide receiver?
Mm-hmm.
What does that secondary look like? What's the kind of pecking order there? And are they done along the offensive line? Will we see some shuffling there after cuts come, and do they try to add better and running back? Are you content with Ty Chandler as your backup? I just don't know. I don't think, Judd. I mean, I think you have to go.
There, Chip.
You have to go find a veteran, right? So,
yeah.
Childress used to always warn us, don't read into the 53, right? And I think this is going to apply this year. When they say 53, it's not going to be the final.
There's a ton of things here that you just brought up that I find to be intriguing. One is just from a number standpoint, defensively, do we see sort of a repeat of what they kept by position last year, or does that completely change? Because I think they have to, and I think that they're going to keep an extra safety, but that's going to come from somewhere. At quarterback, O'Connell basically said, we're keeping 3.
Yeah, he told me that's a good question by you. He said, you can go ahead and call me the third quarterback.
Well, and I said, yes. So which means you wouldn't cut yourself.
Yeah.
But with the rule now of the emergency quarterback has to be on the 53, but he doesn't count on game day. I think a lot of teams are going to keep 3 and not tempt fate there.
Yeah.
But then does that come from the running back position? There's a lot of forget the names for a second. There's a lot of questions on positions to me. You're exactly right. Wide receiver, there's a lot of guys. There are guys. Tristan Jackson will be picked up.
100%.
Tight end, Nick Muse will be picked up. If they don't make the 53, I don't think that those guys are going to get through to the practice squad. I should say.
Judd, do you think Jaron Hall would not get through the practice squad?
I don't think O'Connell wants to tempt it.
Wasn't it like there was a gentleman's agreement around the NFL? They're trying to get this guy in the practice squad. Let's not be that.
But the problem is they can't promote him if they put him on practice squad. He can't. Yeah. He's got to be on. So you can't do the Saturday night thing with the third QB. Yeah. That guy has to be on the 53. So I think Jaron Hall has this team made by that, unless of course the other big talker that we have seen this guy's name thrown out by a ton of folks nationally, which is, do they pursue Trey Lance for a late round draft pick?
Yeah, Is it worth a late round draft pick? Probably, but if Kevin O'Connell's made up his mind, is like, you know what, I don't like him. He doesn't fit. Then why are you even going down that
That's
route?
true.
And I don't know. I mean,
But what if he
surely
hasn't?
they evaluated him, right? I mean, surely they did all the homework on him, and without knowing what O'Connell's, they may already decided, nah, he doesn't fit with what we want, so it's not even a talker. And I don't know where that is, but you're right. I mean, the numbers game is going to be interesting because, I mean, somebody's going to get squeezed at wide receiver. Somebody's going to get squeezed at tight end, Nick Muse, I would think. And they'll get picked up. So I'm sure they're going to have to cut someone that they probably like and wish that they didn't have to. But that's what you have to make the tough decisions on.
Absolutely. And they're also going to have to keep guys. I think they're going to be forced to keep guys that they don't necessarily like that much right now. I mean, Lewis Seam's going to make the team. If he's a 6th round pick, I think he gets cut. Andrew Booth Jr. is going to make the team. He does not play Flores' style. So like Flores is like your second team guy, dude. So like there's a lot of there's guys who are going to make the roster based on their priority of where they were drafted that I think given different circumstances, Chipper wouldn't make this roster. And those guys are going to eat up some, potentially valuable spots.
Yeah, you go back to what you said about the safeties. Judd, every time I look out there, there's three safeties on the field.
I know.
It's almost like that's their base defense. We see it so often that you're probably going to have to keep an extra safety because of that. That is going to be, based on what we've seen in camp, a staple of Brian Flores' defense. I mean, you're just going to see that a lot. And so I would be curious, how many, if you were to guess, they're going to set that 53, how many changes between Tuesday and let's say the following Tuesday, before they come back and really get into game plan? 3, 4?
I think they go get a running back.
A running back. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something with the line. I wouldn't be surprised if running back, I think for sure. I think there's going to be guys that they want to, that they're not really crazy about on their roster that they want to see who gets cut. And running back to me is an obvious one, right?
Yes.
There's just not enough depth there.
Yes.
I mean, Kane Wagu's just,
they're not happy there.
I guess he makes the team, but
I'm not so sure anymore, Chip. Like he's a good kickoff returner, but the league doesn't care about kickoff returns. And I mean, he had a chance here, and I know he got hurt, but I think it's sort of mysterious that he just disappeared.
I mean, he hasn't done anything really since that first day, right?
He walked out for the walkthrough on Monday, and in a walkthrough, and did absolutely.
Are we sure he makes the
nothing.
team? I guess he does because
I'm not sure.
I mean, I know they value him as a kick returner, but it's like enough for a roster spot when you're cutting. I don't know. I guess I'll still say he makes it, but I'm not. I don't. It doesn't feel like a slam dunk because they have to be just frustrated there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part of this conversation too is this one on the offensive line. Our teams, including the Vikings, waiting on Dalton Reisner until after week 1 when his salary for 2023 is not guaranteed. And like, could the Vikings go out and sign a veteran running back the same way? Mm-hmm. So like, there's going to be guys that they claim, but I don't think that the roster construction is going to be really done until after the Buccaneers game, because I could see them definitely trying to add veterans that they don't have to guarantee the entire salary by not signing them before Tampa Bay.
That's true. I mean, and that it happens all the time, and you can see that. But yeah, I mean, well, here's the other one. Based off last week, are you comfortable with Odu being your swing tackle?
Not really. I mean, I was until then.
Is it one bad game, or did that shake their confidence in him? I don't know.
That was a tour de force of crap. I mean, that was awful. Watching that was, back-to-back penalties. He was getting beat left and right. And I defended him because I always said, you know what? He's a terrible guard, but he shouldn't have played guard, but he could play tackle. But that was absolutely, and here's my thing too. I'm glad O'Neal's back. I hope he's fine. Yeah. But we've talked about this. It's a big man with an Achilles. So like he, could go down at any point.
Yeah. I mean, you always worry, but he looked pretty good in that I mean, full go, he looked good, and he said he felt good. So, yeah, but I mean, yeah, we're sitting here quibbling about swing tackles and backup guys, but it's like that's how you win in the NFL. You win by your depth, right? That determines your season. It's not like minutia. It absolutely. I used to think it's like, why do we care about 40 through 53? Because that's how you win in the NFL a lot of times.
Yep.
It's survival to get to the end,
In the playoffs too.
Yeah. I mean, you win with the quarterbacks and your stars, obviously, but
right. But the attrition is incredible now.
Yeah, the attrition, you've got to have good backups. You just do.
Mm-hmm. And you got to have a ton of depth. And that's the thing is, and look, nobody's going to replace, Darisaw straight up or O'Neal or Jefferson, but you can't go off a cliff there. That's the thing is, like, your backups, they're backups for a reason, but they have to be serviceable.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you lose Jefferson, Cousins, there's guys you lose, your season's done. But I'm talking about just your average starter. Like, you can't have a massive gap between that when you start having to plug in holes. I mean, if you lose your stars, you're done. But it's the other guys. You need to have depth. And so this is where, missing on drafts has really cost this team. The depth in the last couple of years has just showed up. It hasn't been good enough. And
the 2022 draft, Kwesi's first one, I have tried to have as open mind as possible, right? And I said, you know what? That was year one. It wasn't great, but let's see. I got to be honest. After watching almost every training camp practice, I feel the same. I don't feel good about this.
No. I mean, there's just still way too many question marks about where's this player, what's this player going to be? And so it's a big year for that group, and it's a big year for Kwesi to show that he didn't swing and miss on a draft, right? So, but it was, I mean, I thought the Cardinals, I know they got a lot of reps in. I thought the Cardinals joint practices were a little more kind of ho-hum because of the heat. Yeah. It felt like it wasn't as energized as maybe the Tennessee one. The heat that first day was just brutal. I can understand why guys might not, it might not been as energetic. But I still think they got, a ton of really good work. The live periods, the 2 minute. Was it the first day against the Cardinals, the 2 minute or was that the Tennessee ones where they had a couple interceptions? That wasn't good.
Tennessee.
Yeah. So, but I watched the Vikings defense against Cardinals offense. Holy cow. That Cardinals team is going to be awful, Judd.
Oh, poor Colt McCoy. They're going to throw him. He's going to be the sacrificial lamb. And yes, they're going to be absolutely terrible. They're going to be terrible. I think Tampa Bay is going to be terrible. Yeah. And I mean, this is, I think at the end of the day that this is going to be a race for Caleb Williams.
Yeah. And if I would go 0-17 for him.
I think they'll trade Kyler, or try to trade Kyler.
Well, I don't. He just got the big deals. I don't know what his contract situation is, but is it going to be really prohibitive if they get that number one deal?
It's gonna be hard, but I don't know that you could pass on a potential, generational guy. And Kyler Murray's not generational.
No, there's no way I'd pass on Caleb Williams. I'd go 0-17 for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, they're in a tough spot, but yeah, they're not going to be good. So
to go back to the Vikings offensive line against the Cardinals, and before that, the Titans fronts, which were the Cardinals front had some pressure. The Titans front is great. What's your concern about the interior? And I asked that because off the Cardinals practices, and this seems weird, we did see the Vikings hit some good deep shots against them. And so and to get those deep shots, there's no question that the pass protection has to hold up. But I felt like in the short game, the protection didn't hold up as well. And for a lack of a better term, and to use a cliche, it felt like the pocket got muddy quickly. What was your interpretation of that?
Yeah, they hit, I know, two long ones. Rager got one, and was it Powell got the other one?
Jefferson. Well, day one, Powell got one, Rager got one, Jefferson and Osborne. But I'm talking about like the short game, the screen game. It seemed things got blown up really quickly.
I would say just from watching it, and I didn't study him the whole thing, but I would say inconsistent. Like there were times
passes
where
being tipped.
Yeah, there were times when
hurt,
Cousins it looked clean, and he would hit one with Jefferson, and then there'd be tipped, or it'd be a hurried throw by him, or like you're just like, wow, where'd that come from? It just felt inconsistent. That's what I'm saying. It's like a lot of good and a lot of bad. And I would say that was the offense line. What's my concern with the interior? I would say probably the biggest. Well, I don't know if it's the biggest concern. One of the few biggest concerns for the team, obviously, because they didn't do anything to upgrade it. They probably rolled it back, and it wasn't like now they have great tackles, but their interior line, I still think is going to be susceptible, Judd, to big, massive tackles and nose tackles and the pressure up the middle. How big a leap is Ingram going to make?
Right.
Do you think Cleveland's? Can you rely on him and think he's going to perform at a decent level? I don't know. And Bradbury, we kind of know what he is, so I'd say it's still a concern.
I think it's my single biggest concern, because as apprehensive as people are about the defense, I'm actually anticipatory. Like, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
Because coaching there, as we've talked about, and I'm not guaranteeing a thing, but I'm just saying coaching on defense can make a difference. Sure. I look at that interior line, and in pass protection wise, I just don't know.
Yeah. I agree with you on there. Outside of Murphy, what's your confidence level with the corners?
Actually,
I would say interior corners are.
Do you know what my biggest concern is defensively? The run defense. Because I think they're going to get enough pressure on quarterbacks that it's going to help the corners a lot. I'm not saying that they won't get beat, but I do think that I think, to go back to your word, which I agree with, I think the chaos, especially, the lesser QBC, it's going to throw them for a loop. And I do think that that you're either going to have guys like Hunter getting home or applying pressure. Mm-hmm. I'm more curious about the interior defensive line on the runs, and what happens when they get to the second level of those linebackers, and let's say it's Pace and Asamoah on the field together, not Hicks. Yeah. That's where I'm concerned. I actually think that the run defense, to me, is a huge question mark, because I don't know how good they're going to be able to stop teams.
Yeah, and that was an issue last year. Yeah, yep. That was an issue last year, and probably is the bigger concern, because I agree with you. I just think you can scheme up pressure, and I think Flores is going to do that with all the movement around, who's blitzing, who's not. I think they'll get pressure, but if teams start really just being the physical offensive line, are they going to be able to handle that? And I think that's why I do think that was a big part of why O'Connell found the Titans attractive as a joint practice, to see how their front would hold up against that physical line. And it was a practice, so what are we going to take from it, right? But
it wasn't great.
Yeah, I didn't think they got overwhelmed, but they also weren't tackling Derrick Henry. But you're not going to face Derrick Henry every week, obviously. But so no, but I would say interior. There's still concerns about defense, but maybe interior offense line is the top one.
Got a question for you about Kwesi, and goes beyond what we just talked about with his draft picks. I want to hear your opinion about Kwesi and contracts, because we've certainly talked about what appears to be the Hockenson hold in a ton. But, Phil Dex and I talked about this a couple of days ago. He is yet to give out internally, and this is what Spielman loved to do. He's yet to give out a big contract. They've said no to Kirk. Jefferson's not done yet. And I think a lot of us thought that Jefferson would get that extension by now. And by the way, the price ain't going down there. Hawkinson's not done. Darrisaw is going to be eligible for an extension next spring. What's your theory here? Exactly. He got a torn up contract that they just said, okay, here's a year, and then you can walk, which I think a lot of us think he's going to do. So what's your theory or thought here? Because I find this to be very intriguing, because I have no idea what the plan is here.
Yeah, it's weird, because if you look at, like Marcus Davenport, that's a prove it contract. And I was totally on board with that one. Like, okay, bring this guy in. He hasn't, The profile looks like he should be better, more productive than the end. So bring him in on a 1-year deal, even if it's for pretty big money. He's like, what, at 10? What did Davenport get? I can't remember what his contract salary was, but I understand like short term there. But you're right. I just thought we'd come to camp, and first day of camp there'd be a press conference with Jefferson that this is done. I know it's a complicated, right? Because it's gonna be a historic deal. Jefferson's gonna be historic. The Hockenson one is confusing. I don't know if Hockenson's side is being unrealistic. If Kwesi's still just hesitant to give out, that really long-term 5-year massive contract, he's gonna have to do it with Darrisaw and Jefferson, right? And I think you're gonna have to do it with Hockenson. So I don't know. I don't know if this is just a new GM wanting to make sure he's completely comfortable with what he's doing with these big contracts, because this is going to set his legacy, right? In a lot of ways. One, what he does at quarterback, but two, the guys that you signed, the big contracts, that's on your resume. And so I don't know if he's just being ultra thorough or cautious, but I just thought they'd be done by now, Judd. I really did.
And look, I like the fact that he is creating potential for freed up cap space. Like I do, because I mean, Rick tied himself down pretty poorly or badly, and at the end of the day, that becomes a pain. But that being said, no one has been signed. So like, like if they had said Kirk is our guy, and in March, here's 3 years, I'd be like, oh, okay, that's a tell, right? Or Hockenson, who I think we all thought was going to be done by now easily. And it sounds like they're not that close. So if one or two were done, I'd be like, totally get this. And I'm not even criticizing him. I'm just saying, I don't know what the end game here is. And like, could Hockenson be dealt eventually here? Is he for sure going to sign? What happens if on September 10th, he wakes up and doesn't have an extension, which is certainly a possibility now? Does his back still hurt? Like there's just a lot of unknowns here. And I am loath to completely believe that Hockenson is going to play in week 1 unsigned, because no one so far has told the truth at all. So like, why would I believe him? Like, why would the one thing that I hang my hat on be, I'm going to play against the Bucks? It's sort of weird, but I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, let's officially see that before we assume it's a given.
Yeah, and we know that Kwesi inherited some bad contracts, right? Mm-hmm. It's just Rick's regime punted him down the road into his lap, so he had to clean up that, and he doesn't want to get in that situation where he's tied to contracts that are going to be prohibitive from him doing his competitive rebuild and reshaping the roster. We know that. And that's admirable, right? But there's ones you have to do.
Right.
Like, these are not like, I'm on the fence about Justin. No, it's like,
or who's your quarterback?
Like that. The Cousins one, I would even put in a different situation, just because of, he's more complicated because of the age and like, how far do you want to go with him? Like Jefferson, there's no, that one you got to do. Darrisaw, you have to do. I think Hockenson you have to do, right? What
do you?
You're not going to do that one?
That's my question. Do you?
What's the alternative here?
Johnny Mundt is the best third tight end in NFL history. You know what? Now it's very clear why he said that. Now it's very, very clear what O'Connell was saying, which is if he has to be the second. And it's interesting too. And I'm not saying it does not get done, okay? Because if I was to put odds on it, I would say that Hockenson signs a contract before the opener. But all that being said, these joint practices shined a light on just how much Josh Oliver has stepped into that role. Like for a guy that was signed to block, he was running Hawkinson's routes and he was doing that job. So again, we don't have a book on Kwesi or that's it. For the most part, O'Connell. We don't know. So like, we're always assuming, well, this is what the Vikings have done. This is what Rick did. This is what Brzezinski, who's still there, did. And yes, that's what they did, but we don't have a book. We don't know. We don't know what the plan at quarterback is. We don't know if they would, call BS on TJ Hockenson and say, we're not giving you more guaranteed than George Kittle. That's where I find all of this to be intriguing because of what we don't know about their philosophies.
Yeah, the only thing we know so far is that he's more comfortable giving out these short-term deals than long-term deals in situations where guys still have a lot to prove, right? Like, I wouldn't put, obviously you don't put Jefferson, Darisaw, and Hockenson in that. These guys got a lot to prove type. I mean, you're just going to have to reward them.
Right.
Hockenson is interesting because we know we saw how valuable he is to Kirk and O'Connell, right? So, but the thing we don't know is like, there's been some reports and rumors that his side's wanting the moon. Does he want to, be the highest paid tight end? Well, he's not the best tight end. Okay.
But he wants the most guaranteed money. It sounds like.
And so that'll be a test for Kwesi. Like, all right, we're not doing that, to see who wins that stare down contest. I have to think they'll, as it gets closer to that, because you're right, Judd. He doesn't want to have to miss games, and he doesn't want to have to, keep saying he has a back injury into the season where he's missing games. So my hunch tells me it gets done before that first game. But this is Kwesi, walked into a situation where there is a lot of big ticket decisions or big ticket items he has to solve.
Yes. And my spidey senses on Hockenson tell me that part of the reason for the continuing different injury saga is to create the possibility that if he's not signed, he'll come in for the Buccaneers game and say, my back hurts. And then they can't fine him. I think the reason why everybody is saying it's not a hold in, he's hurt, is that TJ and his agent, probably very smart, have decided, hey, if we paint this as an injury problem, despite the fact the team knows it's not, we can't have him then be fined, because that would be insubordination. He would have to be suspended at that point. So I don't see that, but I just think it's intriguing. And the last thing, have you in your time out there, and this is not a bad thing, it's a natural progression, but to your point about like a lot of decisions and a lot of things, have you sensed a different, not in a bad way here, but tension than a year ago? Last year, it felt like the camp was easier. O'Connell was new. Everything was fresh. I sense from O'Connell, especially, I sense a different, like, we won 13 games and this is now going to be a chore. I think he's ratcheted the intensity up, including himself a bit, I think.
Yeah. And I don't know that it's purposeful. Maybe it's just because we know more about them and we know that these issues that they didn't have to deal with last year, right? It was, hey, we're just here's our roster. We're kind of going to see what we have, then make a decision on, which way they go. Well, now the quarterback situation is an issue, right? You have to, there's no more punting that down the line after this year. You've got to figure out what you're going to do.
You already did.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson, you have to pay him. These contracts, you had a little bit of a grace period last year, a honeymoon, where now it's like, okay, now there's expectations. Now guys need to get paid. Now you have to figure out the quarterback situation. So there's just that inherent, whether they're acting, I don't think they're acting differently, but there's just a little more inherent urgency about what's going on to get this, to get these issues resolved.
Absolutely. All right, Chip Scoggins, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks. And by then, I think we'll be on the precipice of the opener. So plenty to discuss.
Can't wait.
Appreciate it, man.